Hello. Welcome everyone tonight to the Kinia and Rachel Jam. I'm Kinia and this is
Rachel.
Yes, as our little title says here. And if you're joining us to watch tonight, welcome. And if you are catching a replay tomorrow, that's also great. I'm the CEO of Pros and Babes. Rachel is the marketing manager at Kepler Academy. We're two moms and we want to bring you some goodness and inspiration here. So working mom life feels less lonely. And today we're talking about self-awareness and emotional intelligence, which are huge leadership topics. I think Rachel and I were both passionate about having more mothers in power. This is really what this conversation truly at the end of the day is about. And so we have some ideas, notes talking about what you really need to know about emotional intelligence and self-awareness as you juggle being a working mom, being at work and being a mom, because when these two spaces intersect, stuff gets really weird when it comes to emotions, right? You learn a lot about yourself and you don't know what's normal, what isn't. And so we'll be talking about our own experience and some great tips we have. So Rachel, when we suggested that topic, like what first came to your mind when you were reflecting on emotional intelligence and self-awareness?
I was thinking about how I changed before I had children and then how I changed after, and the way that I thought about my presence at work for sure, and how much life, if you can hear little talking in the background, can impact that. It's really cool though. It's emotions is something that can affect you, and at home, and as you can hear my little one. So I feel like I used to apologize for that, and now I don't. This is just life.
No,
it's just what it's all about. Yeah, see, you hear it all the time. Motherhood really impacts the way you look at yourself too. And for me anyways, it changed my confidence levels. It changed self-awareness for sure. And just because things that happen at home obviously come into the workplace too. So that's automatically what I thought about, and a big shift that happened, and also how I saw myself as well. I had to move through a lot of self-confidence issues and self-doubt before I started building myself up again. And I feel like if I could have talked to my old self now, I may have had a different experience. So
you would give her way more hugs, right? Like we'd be so much nicer to ourselves if we knew what we'd grow into.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how valuable motherhood can be for your career as well. So that's what initially came to my head. And also to thinking about how motherhood can be seen as a negative transition to go through. And just the thought of that, or the assumption of that, coloring my feelings about how I would be coming back to work, and how that can affect your confidence. Just those feelings that you're feeling because of your perceptions and judgments of it after you're on your way back into the office. That's what I first thought about when I was reading all of these prompts and these questions, for sure.
And okay, let's get completely real here. It doesn't matter how powerful or confident or educated or high up you are in the food chain. Mm-hmm. I've talked to a lot of moms, and most moms have crises of confidence when it comes to their changing identity. It's like we might walk into the office and wear that blazer and look super confident and rocket, but inside, so many moms feel scared and confused and wondering, is this what I still want to do? How is this going to work out? And they feel torn about leaving their kids in childcare in the beginning, or maybe they're super excited and they feel guilty, right? Enjoying that hot cup of coffee at work. So if we're going to talk about one thing, is that almost everybody feels difficult emotions inside through this transition, right? Even if you're putting a powerful face at work because you want to look professional, like you've got it together. And I think that's a double-edged sword, because when we don't talk enough about it, then there's no progress in terms of how we support working parents. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Rachel. Like, could we be doing better in terms of having more open dialogue about the challenges of transitioning back to work or being a working mom, especially in a pandemic?
Do you think that there are enough female mentors and enough female leaders in the workplace to be able to have these conversations to begin with? That's the first thing I would think about, because that's what I was looking for when I first I was thinking about, whether or not to apply for a job or a promotion. And also too, when I got pregnant, who should I tell and when? I should be strategic about this. And it starts to that, just the fact that you're pregnant affects the way that you think about work and how you're showing up and how people might think and feel about you. So do we have enough women in leadership roles to be able to speak to their colleagues and their staff, and so women feel comfortable being able to actually go to someone and talk about it, have the conversation to begin with? It's pretty quiet, I feel like, in some workplaces. And I don't know if it's changed over. Sure, I can.
Yeah. Hello, handsome man. So do you want to tell us about emotions and being a working mom?
He needs mama. He needs mama to come and lay with him, I think. No, this is what motherhood's all about. Do you want to wave, Alex?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if you can hear me. Your mom's got headphones. But
no.
She's a brave lady. Well, yeah, a lot of this year has been about that, right? Like sitting in front of Zoom and having your child being there in that moment where you're just staying stoic and performing it at the same time, like wrangling little legs and bum, trying to be like, yes, everything's fine. Right? And so it's been a year, and I don't know if we're really talking about it a lot more. I've opened up recently. I had a podcast recording today, and I talked about how most of my bosses weren't moms. And so it can be like people come with such good intentions, or they say they've had friends and things like that, but when you end up in a room to pump when there's no lock or like no chairs and it's all dusty and you're just feeling all ashamed and things are leaking, it's right? You just feel like things have not really progressed on that front. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of the battle of our generation. We realize that there's still quite a bit of work to do. So hopefully our kids are not facing the same challenges.
Those feelings of imposter syndrome I feel, for me anyway, I felt different the moment that I knew I was pregnant. And then also transitioning back, everybody knows you're coming off of maternity leave or parental leave or whatever decision you as a parent made. So the conversation's completely different for you as a female colleague versus male colleagues. And that to me is the turning point, especially for mothers, I think. The one thing that I would forget or I wouldn't know until later on, and maybe reflecting now, is all of the strengths that you start to build and all of the great tools that you build, and the patience and the kindness towards others and the understanding and empathy that you start to build once you understand the stress and the multitasking, and also it's just looking back at how it was. But that imposter syndrome, and then not having somebody who you can speak to about it, that's the hardest part, I think. Without somebody to tell you, I went through that and this is how I overcame it, and this is how I felt.
I have to do the race car.
Thanks, Betty. Okay. Sorry, Kinia.
Looking forward to seeing the race car. No, for sure, Rachel. And I guess we're going to get into some tips. We have a checklist next to us, and one of the first things we do when we're thinking about emotions, feelings, and states going back to work or being a working mom, will first acknowledge, right? Yeah, absolutely. First acknowledge how you feel and honor that. We live in a culture where you're not supposed to show a whole spectrum of emotions at work. And I mean, to some extent, it's fine. You're supposed to come in and be productive. At the same time, it can be hard to go through this transition without having a space to really express those feelings. Maybe some of us work in settings where there's a fellow mom and you can, go grab a coffee and commiserate. And I remember when I came back from one of my maternity leaves, I did have another mom, and it was so helpful just to have somebody who really understood. But sometimes you don't have the space to express your emotions. So number one, just acknowledging how you expect to feel. Are you expecting to feel happy, joyful, excited, ambitious, productive? sad, anxious, sleep deprived, moody, for many women, they realize that it's a combination of those emotions, right? Like you'll coexist with the excitement of being so happy to be back at work and being productive and talking with your colleagues and feeling intellectual and having an impact in the world, but you might also feel sad and anxious and wondering how your child is doing in a different setting. You might be sad that your maternity leave is over, or that things are not the way you had anticipated them to be with a pandemic, right? So I don't know, did you reflect on any of that when you were finishing a maternity leave, or there weren't really conversations or resources?
Well, I think there were resources, some that were available for sure. And they were more about conversations around, what are your benefits going to look like?
Right.
What, great tips for returning back to work. But at that time, there were no supports on finding childcare, or, and maybe on the government website, there's a checklist on questions to ask or what to look for, how to feel comfortable for childcare. But as we both know, that looks very different for all mothers and parents regardless. And so I feel like even in a childcare setting, there's a various emotion, like various things that parents come in and feel too. So no, I feel like there were some, but for the most part, it was meant to be almost like encouraged to be a stoic process. So everybody's been there. We've all gone through that. You'll be fine, or, been there, done that kind of conversations. Whereas, if you're feeling, everything on here, energized and tired at the same time, excited and worried at the same time. And it's a lot of, that's two different emotions all at once at the same time. And I definitely felt that way. And it took a while for those two for me to let go of some of the worry that I had. And when you're coming into new territory, you're naturally going to have it. But no, I struggled to find ways to have the conversations other than with like colleagues, I guess, or different people that have been through the same thing as I did. And I definitely asked for a lot of advice during that time because I didn't know how to navigate it. First time, for sure. And really, really torn. And it's good because, now looking back, I think, and we'll talk about emotional intelligence later, but I felt different than, as a mother versus maybe as a father, because of that, especially the break and just feelings of worry and self-doubt as you're going back to work are always there. And you definitely, I tried to put on a confident face too, but it was tough. It was hard.
Absolutely. Well, yes, I agree too. And, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, the foundation, first of all, is recognizing your emotions and understanding how they show up, because it's different and for everybody, right? And the permission to show or not show an emotion, how you express it. In fact, more and more science is showing how important it is to acknowledge and feel our emotions, and the links between that and serious health conditions like cancer and Alzheimer's, right? So because it's such a huge emotional transition for women, we need to talk about it. We need to say, like, you're going to feel a bunch of different stuff. You're not alone. Nothing is good or bad, but just make space for those emotions, identify them, and know that it's normal, that you're not alone. For everything you're feeling, there's surely another mom and a bunch of them that feel that way. And, once you know what emotions to expect, and expect that there's going to be a bit of an emotional roller coaster. If you're still sleep deprived, if you are still breastfeeding, or if you're weaning, your hormones are not regulated yet, like, it does affect your mood. And so you can choose strategies, right? So one of them will be being mindful of typical postpartum emotions. Postpartum mood disorders are so extremely common, whether it's anxiety, depression, OCD, like postpartum, prepartum, and thankfully that's been normalized, but just, you don't have to suffer alone with any of those these days, right? So just knowing that it happens to so many women, and powerful women. Figure out to what you want outside of the workspace, because maybe you've been on maternity leave in Canada and for a longer period, and then you go back to work, and then all of a sudden your life is being a mother and being a worker, but then you don't have a plan for what you are outside of work because everything is so all consuming and it's so easy to disconnect from your desires, right? So figuring out what else you want outside of work and home is so critical. Getting the support and kindness you need. There are places where you need to perform, but sometimes you just need to like cry on somebody's shoulder or get that support. Building executive stamina through exercise and preparing in advance for difficult conversations. So motherhood often comes with the label of like tired or preoccupied or less invested in your career. And I've heard of some moms being so frustrated because they wanted to press the gas pedal in their careers, but then they would be treated with kid gloves at work. And there would be assumptions that, oh, you don't want to travel or you don't want this big project. Whereas it's so individual. Some people may want it. Some people may want to scale back. And so like preparing in advance that people may not even know what is the right thing to say or to do, and coming prepared can help you. Do any of these resonate with you, Rachel? Like when you hear of these strategies?
Completely. And I think that, so I was going to mention when I came back to work, my anxiety, so this was in 2016, so a couple of years before I even worked for Kepler, I had returned to work briefly and my anxiety was definitely at an all-time high. Looking back now, I think that I had postpartum anxiety for sure, something that I hadn't addressed from when my son was first born, and it kind of kept trailing through, and it definitely affected my life. I felt when I was at home and it was quiet, I felt lonely. That's why I started blogging. I was downtown. I felt like I needed to make lots of connections with moms just because I felt out of touch. And it was because I'm a very social person, very, very, I thrive on, I get my energy, social, I love being connected. And when I was at home, I felt like all of a sudden I didn't have that network anymore. And the tables turned. And when you're a social person who's sitting in a quiet room with a crying baby, it can be very challenging. Even though you have so much compassion and empathy for that little crying baby, you also feel, what did I just do? Wow. How have I messed up my life? But I felt so anxious after I was coming back to work, only because I didn't really know how to manage those feelings. And I feel like I didn't do the right steps to actually get some tools in my tool belt for dealing with them, even at home, regardless, and not at work, but just at home. So how do I manage high anxiety? I remember one instance where Alex was a newborn. I think he was 4 weeks old, and my mother-in-law and she came to Edmonton to help me with Alex. And you know, when newborns have, I'm just going to say it, really like runny yellow poop. And I took him to
everybody's the runny yellow poop.
Everybody's had to deal with it. So I remember taking him to Denny's. We went to Denny's on the trail, and we just wanted to go out for brunch. Like I just wanted shredded hash browns. Like I just needed to sit down and have a cup of coffee and shredded hash browns. And I remember like sneaking into the restaurant because I was embarrassed of this crying baby in a bucket seat. And it was because I was a new mom with a 4-week-old baby. And I'm sneaking over to the booth at the table and sort of apologizing to everyone as I walk by their tables, and I sit down, and all of a sudden, you know, I sit down for a hot coffee, and all of a sudden he needs a diaper change. So and so many times like this where you go to relax or sit and your fight or flight response is turned on again. Yeah. And in so many ways that happens after you have a baby. It's like night and day difference. One day you don't have this reactive response, and then the next, that reactive response is turned on. And I think that's what happened to me. I was constantly reacting, constantly getting up to do something or clean up a mess or change a diaper. And I felt embarrassed because of little emotional outbursts and crying from my child. It started to really get that stress build up. And so not getting the right tools to deal with those kinds of stressful situations, and then trying to transition back into the workplace where all of a sudden it's quiet and you don't have any, you're not having to then respond quickly again. And it feels weird, and it feels like you're doing something wrong and you're not being responsive. So I feel like maybe that's where that came from for me. And it's taken me a little while to sort of move past that kind of anxious response, because it's sort of built up in me a little bit. Yeah.
Who doesn't have a runny yellow poop story? I remember after I gave birth for the first time, I had a good home birth, but I had stomach pain and I lost a lot of blood, and we're trying to get out of the house, and it was crazy. Every time we're with a bucket seat, ready to pop it into the stroller, a diaper change was needed, and then nursing was needed. And I remember getting out, my mom was visiting. I lived close to the university area at that time, and there were renos, it was so dusty, but we were so determined to go to the park. And I was there almost folded in half because my stomach was crying. And then I think she was meeting me in the park, and I remember I forgot to take spare diapers. And lo and behold, it was super windy, and that's when he decided to just blap, and here I was running around the park feeling so stupid that I didn't have a diaper, right, with my stomach aching and so panicked, and changing my baby on the table feeling all frazzled. And then people around me were like, it's okay, it's fine. I felt so stupid. So I remember those feelings. They're raw, and they stay with you for quite a while, right? You're so new at this whole game.
Frantic. It's almost like a frantic feeling. And I'm kind of just having this realization now, or maybe I am, just because I think that those responses built up because of those experiences, and that's why I was sort of feeling that anxiety. But now looking back, I can see that now. And maybe, if my little guy, had that blowout, or you were on that same walk and going to the park, you would have taken a deep breath and thought, okay, it's okay. 5 minutes is fine. You'd have that hindsight, so you could move forward without feeling stress. That stress response wouldn't be turned on right away, but maybe that's what it is. And we carry it through once we go through that transition. Yeah.
And how many of us post those pictures on Instagram, right? Obviously we post the picture of the baby and how cute we're looking in our baby carrier, but so much on social media doesn't reflect the day-to-day of adjusting to life as a new mom or as a working mom. And so it's just for everybody out there who's going through that transition and doesn't know what feels normal. You are truly not alone experiencing all of that, right? So we hope that normalizing those feelings and identifying some strategies. I love Harvard Business Review. They have tons of good articles for working moms. It's definitely a good starting point. Now,
right on.
When it comes to emotional intelligence, we have a couple of reflections here too. So checking whether you are actually in tune. Can you easily identify the emotions that you feel? Are you aware of the bodily sensations of your different emotions? You might laugh if you're not used to doing this and kind of being all stern and operating at work, but this is truly important knowledge to have. And again, science is showing it over and over again. And it's important for our kids too, right? To teach them to recognize those emotions. So do you know how to set your emotions aside to make a decision based on facts, right? Are you able to identify, but then also look at things factually? Can you make decisions sensitively, however stressful the situation? Are you calm in situations of crisis? Can you read emotions in others? If you can't read them in yourself, it might kind of be challenging to read them in others, right? Can you inspire others to take action? Do you know what to say to make people feel better? Do you have strong relationships, and do you manage difficult situations effectively? So it's kind of like a scale from the beginner to the more advanced. What is required for emotional intelligence, which again is critical. I'll just veer off to the side and remind people that I talk about the $1 million wealth gap so much when it comes to mothers, right? Women stand to lose $1 million in wealth over a lifetime. And the decisions you make for your career and for your finances around the time you return to work and when you become a mother can have a significant impact. So there's no wrong or right way. There's just the aware way, I would say, that is slightly better in my opinion, right? Making informed choices. And so emotional intelligence can have huge impact as how you navigate the workplace, how much you're valued, how you grow as a leader. And so when you become a mom, all of that changes. Your emotions can change, your values can change. And emotional intelligence and being aware of your values, when one of your core values is being violated, it's often when we feel a strong emotion, right? They're tied together. And so all of that is linked. So what came up for you, Rachel, and we're reading all the different types of the I'm not sure if I'm using the right term, but like the spectrum or the umbrella of the skills that are entailed in emotional intelligence.
I think that one that really stuck out for me was being able to manage difficult situations effectively. And I think I've been on both sides of that. So in a situation where it was a difficult situation and I wasn't able to keep it together, and then another situation where would have been very challenging for me previous to having a child, and then after having my little guy, it was easier for me to step up, manage it, and then keep on moving. So, and I hate talking about spit up and poop when we're having these discussions. But working mom me was wearing a blazer. I'm sure I've told you this story before. And little guy off, he spits up on my blazer, and I had to go and I needed this blazer clean, in under an hour. So I rinsed it under a sink, hung it on the fence of the play space out, and then continued on my way. And, previous to, I imagine my former self, who probably would have reacted to that much differently, maybe would have taken it a lot harder, probably would have been a little bit more scared. I would have maybe thought, I can't do this today, I need to go home, whatever. But the mom me knew it wasn't a big deal, and knew that I could kind of, okay, I'm moving on with this. So kind of pausing for a second, using that skill to be mindful, and moving on. But managing some other situations where I think I didn't develop the skill to be able to not take things personally. So, if I have a difficult situation, or maybe a hard conversation to have with a coworker, maybe 3-4 years ago, it would have been really hard. And now it's much easier because I've had practice. I don't take things to heart as much as I used to. And I know it's not the end of the world. So just being able to kind of say what you need to say, but in a way that's kind. And it's, there's skills that I built, but those are two things that came up for sure. Managing those difficult situations and being able to be calm, because before I probably wouldn't have. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Motherhood does give us superpowers. I feel like we should all be using it as a transformation that leads to expansion, not shrinking. And I think when we go on maternity leave, we're so excited, but we're also already shrinking because we think I'm going to be making less money. And so many of us get into the scarcity thinking, which is so unfortunate, because when we figure it out, we make it work, we can learn, we can network, we can adjust our financial choices based on what happened. But you kind of enter already with this idea, I'm going to have less money. And, but in reality, it gives us more, like your husband just walked by, and I thought it was my husband for a moment. I was just really confused. I know. Is there a ghost or something like that? Anyway, so it's playing mind tricks. But motherhood gives us superpowers. And I would so love for every mom who listens to this or watches this on replay or live to know that it doesn't make you a less valuable worker. It makes you a more valuable worker in so many ways, but you have to embrace that, right? Because there are narratives around our values as mothers in the workplace. We have to first believe that we are more amazing being moms, not less, and that we bring skills to the table. So I'd love, I doubt that many people are joining us live for too long tonight, but if anybody's watching a replay, I'm wondering, would you say, Rachel, like if I look at this list of different emotion-related topics, what are some that are the most important to you? Mental health as a mother, making good decisions in the face of difficult emotions, self-awareness, mood swings, having more positive emotions. Is there anything here that is important to you, a cause that's near and dear to your heart when you read those topics?
I think mental health for sure. For sure. And only because of the physical changes you go through when you have children, and how prevalent mental health issues are for new mothers, regardless of how intelligent they are or high up in the corporate pecking order. It doesn't matter. It is something that affects all women, and it's nothing to be ashamed about. And because mental health is a topic people talk about way more now and are much more honest about, it's important. I remember listening to a podcast about how women's health is something that is there's less research on what's going on with women's health, and it's how we show up when we come back from work and how we show up as leaders. And if we can tackle that mental health issue, especially for mothers, there's no doubt in my mind that that is impacting people's return to work and the success and also the way they think about themselves.
Yeah.
I really want people to challenge themselves if they are diminishing themselves or thinking about themselves in a way that's not positive once they've had a child, or less valuable worker, like you said.
Isn't that crazy? Like when I'm listening to you, I just never thought that these are things that we'd face as adults. I just thought that as you became an adult, you'd be more confident and kind of, always know what the right thing is. But the reality is when you become a parent, it's scary and it's confusing and it's a completely new role to grow into. So it was even strange to hear you saying that, right? Like we feel less good about ourselves when we become a parent. It's so strange to think that that is the case for so many of us.
Yeah, it's weird. And building that confidence, I almost had to make a list of my transferable skills.
Yeah.
Keep reminding myself, and I almost had to practice saying it, and give examples of why. And a lot of the things that I did while I was on maternity leave and when I stayed at home with my son were to keep building those professional skills, regardless of whether or not I was at the workplace, making sure that I kept up my professional network, building on different things, because you don't want to be seen as less professional or less dedicated, or less of anything because you chose a certain path or decided to start a family. And those are kinds of challenges that people start to think about before they even start to decide to have a family. So the assumption that is almost, it's built into our culture. It's something that you're trying to break down, and also will remind professional mothers that this is not something that you should be ashamed of, but it is definitely something that you go through. And those things too, something that I found that actually stuck out to me was the SWOT analysis. Do a personal SWOT analysis. Never before have I seen that, and only have I seen that in business. So how do I do a personal SWOT analysis, Kinia?
Well, you would think about your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for your own being. And in fact, I had started a strategy session this weekend with two of my cherished advisors, and we're supposed to get to that, but we didn't. And it's quite an interesting exercise, right? Where do you see your strengths that you bring to the table in terms of your skills? And we tend to have this accomplishment amnesia, right? Like we tend to forget all the stuff. And so whenever you do any more advanced mentorship coaching or mindset coaching and all of that, you have to remind yourself of everything that you overcame and you survived, and anytime you were dropped into a difficult situation and you managed to overcome it and like to build your wings and fly, right? Making a list of that, giving birth, giving life, like growing another organ and another human being is a pretty big deal. And we're just kind of like, I just, I became a mom. It's a really big deal, right? And then looking at your weaknesses is always a constructive thing to do, where it allows you to seek mentorship and training and just upskilling and being aware, and constantly improving, right? And so SWOT, so strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I see motherhood as such a renewal opportunity, truly. Like so many women become confused about their professional roles, or they might get into workaholism. There are so many ways that people approach the season of their life based on what they experience. But ultimately, there's an opportunity to seek deeper in your heart and to identify the treasures you have to bring into this world. And it never stops. Like I'm so surprised at how really highly intelligent, educated, powerful women tend to not know how amazing they are, truly. Like every single person, I love this analogy. I think it was from an athlete. I was at a conference last year, and they said, when you were conceived, like you probably don't want to think about your parents in that moment, right? But there were millions of sperm, and then there was you, and you were a statistical improbability. So like you're meant to be here. You have something truly unique to offer to the world, right? And when I was coming back to work, Like the last thing I felt was like an exceptional person, even though I started this really cool thing, Pros and Babes, and I helped so many moms and I had done amazing work, but I still felt tiny and afraid. I had a new boss and I wasn't telling myself I'm a like miraculous statistical improbability, but every single one of us is. And we should remind ourselves of that more often, right? So motherhood is just an opportunity for you to blossom in beautiful ways. So like have faith that no matter what the obstacles are going to be and how crappy you feel or how confused or whatever the situation may be, there are gifts in every challenge. They're just pointing you in a different direction of where you need to be, right? And like your heart will tell you and your peers will tell you. And then threats will obviously, like we have to get real. The economic threat to when you become a mother is real. And I'm not going to mince my word. I think every mom should have a financial planner. We should start financial planning even when we're early on in university and plan for the probability of having children. Like 90% of us are going to have kids and it's going to impact your earning potential and how you negotiate. So there's definitely a threat if you're not strategic. And I think there's a little guy who wants a kiss. Are you going to say good night? I love you. Oh, you want the booby, don't you? Yeah, I'll be there in 5-10 minutes, love. There you go.
You're the best, Mom. No, it's hard. It's so hard. It's so hard, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the
And I
minute
see
you
a comment, sorry, I see before Allison okay, sorry, I'm going to not say your name right. Crisitiello, I'm probably close, but she says, thanks for this wonderfully candid and real conversation. Just stumbled upon it tonight and so glad I did. I really told this. That's wonderful. Let us know. Yeah, let us know more about what like really struck a chord with you. If there's anything you want to share to inspire other moms too, we should never feel alone on this journey. So anyway, Rachel, I rambled about all of the stuff about the SWOT. That was a pretty long answer. My child waits for a booby in a couple of minutes. But like in terms of working on your emotional intelligence, now
this is life. Well, this is life though. And you know what? It's what we live. This is what we live. And we're not going to hide it. I'm not ashamed of it. It's who we are. And professional realms, I mean, we've seen prime ministers kiss their babies in parliament and nurse their babies. It blows my mind that people aren't comfortable with children in professional spaces. So
it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, I do have like a twang of guilt because I'm not there snuggling my baby. I know like in 5 minutes it'll be okay. I mean, I joke that he'll probably never self-wean. He's probably, if he's big and one day he sees this video, he's like, Mom, why did you share that about me? But I mean, these are very real things, right?
I think it's incredible too, because the most incredible, most explorative, most bold leaders I know are mothers. Because they have gone through some tough situations and they just go for it. And they know that you have, one life and you kind of come to a realization that you don't need to hide anymore. And it's not going to do you any good. And it won't do the world any good if you keep hiding, if you're not out there sharing what you have to give. And you don't have to be ashamed of it. And you don't have to be ashamed of it being messy or making mistakes, because we're all going to do it. And it's almost like that's what life is. And that's what your career is too. Yeah. Your career, and also too, as you become a mentor or a manager or an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you decide to do, a leader, you need to embrace mistakes. You can't expect perfection from your team.
Amen to that.
You can't expect these kinds of things, and you can't hold yourself to those crazy high standards either. In fact, the only time you can grow is when you let go of being afraid of not being perfect and just let things happen. Let them blossom. They will. You move through it just like you do other difficult situations.
I love that. And I love hearing that from you too, because in entrepreneurship, one of my mottos, it's not mine, and borrowed it from mentors, but it's embrace imperfect action. Like you fail your way to success, you test and test and test and test. And yet how many times do we see people feeling like and moms, right? A-types, A+, who got 100% on their tests, thinking you need to get it right every single time. That is ridiculous, truly, to hold yourself up to that standard. It's horrible. It keeps you from being creative, right? And I mean, I sometimes use the word, what would be your perfect date, just to help people dream bigger in terms of what they want and reconnect with their desires, obviously with the caveat that perfection doesn't exist, or it's just what feels good to you, right? Well, we are getting close to, like, it's going to be 9 very soon. So I know there's so much more we can discuss. I love to what you said, we have one life to live. Completely agree. You know, we lost 3 very close relatives in 7 months. In fact, 2 weeks ago. And I've been using a bit of dark humor to cope, because it's just statistically improbable to have so many losses. But it's made me realize that we really have one life. Like, there's no point in holding back behind anxiety, or I know I have gifts to share with this world, and I have one life to do it. I'm going to do it. And maybe some people are going to like it and some people won't. And that's okay, because I believe that we need more mothers in power, and I'm going to do what I can do to make that happen. So that is my last word of the night. Whatever emotions you're feeling, it's okay. Whatever different states of mind you're juggling, going back to work, you're not alone. You have a community here who really wants to support you and believes in you and wants to be a support system for you. So go shine, mama, go shine. Like, that's my message for tonight. Any parting words, Rachel? Anything you want to share that I didn't ask, or from the list that you'd like to discuss?
I love that. I think that I circled take more responsibility for my actions and make sure they align with my values. And that too is so important, because, sorry, that's my dog. Again, there's lots of things going on all at the same time, but we build these skills of being able to listen and juggle. Making sure that your actions align with your values too. So getting real with yourself. Is this actually like, and I remember when I was going back to work first, and I was just talking to a colleague about this today, thinking about the person that I was when I was coming back off maternity leave, and how I was so worried. I was so worried about what people were thinking. So much so that impacted huge decisions that I would make, and ultimately decide to leave a job that I loved. And why I love doing what I do now is I want to encourage moms to just like embrace the messy, and it's okay if you can't predict the future. You just need to move through it and go for it, and put on those rubber boots and slog through the swamp. Embrace things you're unsure about. And also too, when it comes down to it, take responsibility for your actions. You know, if you are comfortable with that and comfortable with saying, I'm sorry, I just made a huge mistake, then you won't be worried about stepping out there and going for it. And ultimately you have to be okay with thinking it's okay if they don't like this or that, or, you know, maybe my coworkers think that I'm not as dedicated, or maybe, you know, maybe they'll be worried about X, Y, Z, but no, just hop in there, have confidence, do what you need to do for yourself. And the rest will work itself out. And absolutely. I see I've been lucky to get to know hundreds and hundreds of moms just like you, who are incredible professional mothers from all walks of life, all kinds of professions, and all various family situations, who completely impress me. And I just love seeing them thrive. And they all they say, like, I'm so happy going back to work, but it's their vocation. It's what they do. It's who they are. And they either strike a balance and find ways that works for them and their family, or they're back full time, or their schedule is totally different. But it's so inspiring to see all these different various forms that our careers take. And I think that just having that like trust in yourself and that faith that it's going to work out is all that you need. And then you won't have any regrets later on by just following your gut and letting go of those people-pleasing thoughts. Like, don't worry about it. Go for it.
Yes, it can be easier said than done, but truly, thank you for reinforcing that, because like, your desires matter, right? There is not one right way. There's your way. You just have to sit down and practice reconnecting with your desires, because you've given life, you're taking care of the needs of others, and your desires can go on the back burner. And when you don't know what you want, it's hard to make values-based decisions if you don't have a vision, if you don't have your desires. So it can take some time and practice getting back in touch with what you want. I work with women to design their vision, and some of them really struggle with it. Like, I can't visualize what I want. And I remind them they have to be patient with themselves. They have to embrace that imperfect action and like scribble down a draft and then go back to it. But if you don't flex that muscle, you're not going to be there. And ultimately you end up showing your kids that, you know, if mom's desires don't matter, you're kind of teaching them through the actions. And that is not why you decided to be a working mom or a working dad, right? I often say working mom because we do face the brunt of the challenges when it comes to being a working parent, but your desires matter so much. And if there's going to be one takeaway from tonight, and I'm very directive with the moms I work with, is put time on the agenda, on the calendar for yourself. I don't care if it's in 3 months or 6 months, but put down that time for you when you're not doing the laundry or taking care of chores or planning or getting birthday gifts, organizing super parties or baby showers. Take time for you, reconnect with you, because next thing you know, you'll wake up, you're, 5 years older, and you wonder, where did I go? What do I like? Who am I? And you're a lot. Like, you're a mom, you're a professional, you're maybe a spouse, you're a community member, you're a sister, but you're also somebody who has her own passions, and you shouldn't forget about those for too long. Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're clear on what you want, then you can make a very blurry judgments. And that's something that can impact you. And you don't have to worry or stress about it. Sorry. You just, you put the time in and think, spend that time reflecting yourself, and then you'll feel better as you move forward. And now I feel like I'm even more confident than ever before. And I've really started to develop into the person that I am and I'm supposed to be, just because I know this is what I love. And I can say it with honesty and truth. And I go, yes, I love this. I love what I'm doing. And before, I didn't have that kind of clarity. So, motherhood and my level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness is definitely very good compared to before. And I think too, I have way more, like I'd said before, empathy for others as I've gone through these situations too. So less judgment and more honesty, and definitely more just, dealing with what comes up and being able to work on it in a mature way more than I was able to before.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. I know you are so busy with work, and every moment with your family matters. Evelyn jumped in, echoed what you were saying here. Have faith and embrace the messy. Yes, absolutely. So our goal here with the Kinia and Rachel Jam is to pop in every month with some discussion about working motherhood, and hopefully give you some stories and tips so that you don't feel alone with the crushing overwhelm of figuring out how to be a working mom. That's so right. Rachel, I will see you backstage to say thank you in just a moment, and to everyone, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.